Hello there, today I wanted to bring you a review of Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Don't worry, the second part of my wrap up will be coming tomorrow, but I wanted to post this before I posted that, because otherwise it just would have been strange. Firstly, I will say, I've got the Penguin cloth-bound edition of this. It's probably not going to show on the camera, but I'm a little bit disappointed because I'm not rough with my books at all. You know, I barely bend the spines sort of thing. But I don't know if you can see, the pattern on the front is sort of faded off, just from where, and on the back, just from where I've been sort of holding it open like that, which is really disappointing because they're not cheap, and that's the thing that's happened. You know, if I knew I was really rough with my books, it wouldn't surprise me, but I'm not. It's a bit worrying because I've got War and Peace in this, and obviously War and Peace is really long, and by the end of this, well, from about halfway really, I was having to read it like this, making sure that I didn't touch the white bits, and who wants to read a book like that? Anyway, moving on to the book. I read this as it's my first sort of long Charles Dickens. I have previously read A Christmas Carol at the start of the year, but this is my first long Dickens, which I read thanks to Katie at Books and Things, who I will link down below. She did a 2-week thing of What's the Dickens, where every day she spoke about a Dickens book. She absolutely loves Dickens, and to hear her speaking about him, you have to pick him up after that. For some reason, I've never been bothered of picking him up before. I think I had it in my head that he'd be too dense for me. Don't get me wrong, it's quite dense. I think that was partly to do with me. I've read a lot this month, and I picked this up literally the day the 24-hour readathon finished, and that was probably a bad idea because by that point I was quite read out. I kind of had enough of reading, and I should have just picked up an easy read, but instead I was like, no, I'll read this, it'll be fine. It wasn't fine. It was quite a slog, especially in the beginning. Not that I wasn't enjoying it, but just that I felt like I was reading, and I was getting through like 50 pages a night, and I was like, how have I not read more? You know, I pick it up at sort of 5 in the evening and still only have read 50 pages by 11 o'clock at night. So it's quite a hefty book. No surprises though. I thought Charles Dickens was going to be dense, and it's not dense to the point of being off-putting. It's not as dense as I thought it could be. So basically, it's going to be hard for me to explain because it's about a lot of things. It follows predominantly Pip. He is a working class boy. His parents have died, and he is being raised by his sister and her husband Jo. And his sister's not particularly nice to him, but Jo is absolutely lovely, considers Pip his best friend and would do anything for him. And Pip is sort of destined to go into the blacksmith business with Jo, and he's never meant to have great things, basically. He's just a working class boy, and that's the way it's always going to be for him. However, he then ends up being sort of nominated to go and see a rich mad woman called Miss Havisham, who has requested a boy to go and play around her. She's got a adopted daughter called Estella, who I suppose she kind of wants Pip to play with, and that's where it sort of starts changing. I think that's the first time, because Estella's quite unpleasant actually, and she sort of judges Pip because obviously she's been raised by this really rich woman who's absolutely crazy but fantastic as well. She still wears her wedding dress, and the house is all laid out in sort of the way it was for her wedding day, but her husband-to-be never turned up, so she stopped the clocks, she's never changed her dress, and everything's exactly how it was, almost I suppose in her hopes that he will come back to her and they can resume their lives from there, which is actually really sad, and she is quite a sad character, but she's also fantastically crazy, and I enjoyed her. But Estella has obviously been raised in this very privileged situation where this woman is funneling all her money into Estella, basically, and Estella judges Pip, and for the first time he realises that he is lower class and that he wants to be upper class, and predominantly I think the reason he wants to be upper class after meeting Estella is because he falls madly in love with her, but also I think because for the first time he realises that he's lower class and that there is something better that he could aim to be. Obviously he thinks he has no way of ever getting this. However, in a strange twist of fate, this is where it's going to get hard to explain. Pip comes into money. he's got a mystery benefactor basically, but he's told that he cannot search for who this mystery benefactor is. He cannot hint at who this mystery benefactor is or who he thinks it is. He just has to accept the money, and he will be told who the benefactor is when the time comes. So he goes to London, and he is a rich man, and obviously things ensue from there. This book predominantly is about redemption, but it covers so many things, and it is so good. And up until the sort of last 150 pages, I thought it was good, but I wasn't blown away. But when it all started wrapping up and you sort of really got the picture came together, it was fantastic. It is basically predominantly about redemption, but in there's also love, there's class, there's misunderstandings, there's selfishness, and everything is in here. And it also looks, it reminded me a bit of East of Eden in the way that it looks very much at what it is to be a truly good person and what it is to be bad. For me, a lot of people said they really didn't like Pip, and that was why it got quite a few low ratings on Goodreads, because people didn't like Pip. They thought he was selfish. All the other characters were fine, but they didn't like Pip, and it's told from Pip's first person point of view. But I didn't not like Pip. He's a flawed character, but at the same time, if your protagonist is not flawed, you haven't got much to go on. He had to be flawed. The only reason he's flawed, I think, is because when he comes into the money, he does leave his old life behind, quite literally. However, I didn't think that made him a bad person, because it's not like he forgot about them or just cast them aside. It's that he didn't feel like he could know them anymore, and I completely understand that feeling of your life has changed, but the people you used to know haven't kept up with that change, and that feeling that you can't really fit them into your new life. I don't think that made him a bad person, I just think that made him conflicted, and obviously other things ensue. He's quite judgmental, etc., and he learns not to be. I don't think that made him a bad person, because he was never outwardly bad, and I think that was just necessary to make it a rip-roaring read as you would. I don't think that made him a bad person, because he was never outwardly bad. As I say, if he had just forgotten about the people he used to know, or just didn't want to know them anymore, it'd be different, but he did want to know them. He just didn't see how he could fit them into this new situation that he was in, which I thought was completely understandable. I really, really enjoyed this, and I would definitely recommend it. It's a hefty book, and it'll take you a while to read. I would definitely recommend dedicating quite a long period of time to it, but it's definitely worth the read. It just covers so much, and it is so human. I'm definitely going to read more Dickens in the future. Bye!